The great hall of the Seraph Dominion gleamed with crystal light, every facet of its vaulted ceiling reflecting alien grandeur. Rows of warriors stood at attention, their armor scaled like obsidian, their eyes cold and unyielding. At the center, Princess Erin walked down the aisle, her silver robes whispering across the floor. Each step echoed the weight of duty. Today she would marry the emissary from Earth, sealing a fragile peace after decades of bloodshed. When she reached the dais, she saw him, the human. Captain James Rourke stood tall but unadorned, his formal uniform simple beside her ceremonial splendor. He didn't bow in submission like her people expected. He simply met her gaze with quiet steadiness, eyes the color of storm clouds. There was no fear, no arrogance, only resolve. Her father, the High Sovereign, watched from his throne, his expression carved from stone. For peace, he declared, two worlds bind their fates. The crowd murmured the ancient blessing, though Erin could feel their disgust ripple through the room. To them, humans were a desperate young species, fragile, impulsive, violent. They'd lost entire continents to their own wars. What wisdom could such creatures offer? James took her hand, and she was surprised by its warmth. His skin was coarse, scarred in places, a soldier's hand, not a diplomat's. For peace, he said softly, his voice carrying across the hall. It was not rehearsed, not grand, just honest. Somehow that made it stronger than any speech her people had prepared. The ceremony ended with silence rather than applause. That night, Erin stood on the balcony of her chambers, the stars of two civilizations glinting above. James stood a few paces behind, gazing upward as if measuring constellations. "Do you resent this union?" she asked at last, her tone cautious, curious. He turned slightly, a faint smile touching his lips. "Resent it? No. Where I come from, peace is rare enough to be worth any cost." Something in his words unsettled her, not fear but curiosity. His calm was unlike any she had known. Her people had always equated peace with power, but this human carried peace like a burden, as though he had seen too much war to take it lightly. For the first time, Erin wondered if the true danger in this marriage wasn't weakness, but strength. The first months of their union passed beneath a fragile calm. The seraph and human banners flew side by side above the palace, their colors rippling together in the high winds. Yet beneath the surface, tension simmered. The nobles whispered that the princess had been shackled to a primitive species. The soldiers mocked the human's soft voice and shorter stature. Even Erin herself wondered if peace could truly last when it was built on mistrust. But James Rourke never faltered. He rose before dawn each day, training in the courtyard until sweat darkened his uniform. The Serath guards laughed at his blunt weapons and strange exercises, until they saw the precision in his movements, the discipline in every breath. Later, he walked the gardens with Erin, speaking not of conquest or politics, but of oceans, forests, and the stars humans still dreamed of reaching. His eyes always searched the horizon, as if war might appear there at any moment. One evening, Erin found him in the war chamber studying tactical maps. "You read our battle records," she said, surprised. "Are you preparing for another conflict?" He looked up, his expression unreadable. "I prepare so I won't need to fight," he replied. "Peace isn't trust, it's readiness. As long as someone believes they can win, peace is only a pause." His words lingered with her long after she left. In him was a paradox, gentle hands that could soothe and destroy with equal ease. The more she watched him, the more the walls of her prejudice began to crumble. He treated every Serath servant with courtesy, every soldier with respect, even those who spat at his back. It was as if he carried an inner company, stronger than any empire's law. Then came the rumors. Erin's informants whispered of a faction of generals, loyal to her father's old regime, plotting to reclaim Serath honor by erasing the shame of peace. The plan was brutal: assassinate the human consort, blame the humans for betrayal, and reignite the war. The night the attack came, it began with a whisper of steel in the corridors. Erin woke to the sound of shattering glass, and a dozen armored figures storming her chamber. James was already awake. He moved with sudden, frightening calm, his eyes no longer gentle, but sharp and cold as the void. The assassins poured through the shattered doorway, their blades glinting in the dim light. Erin froze for half a heartbeat, her instincts screaming to summon the guards, but James was already moving. The calm, patient diplomat she had known vanished, replaced by something terrifyingly precise. He seized the nearest Serath attacker by the wrist, twisting with brutal efficiency until the bones snapped. The alien howled, and James wrenched the fallen blade from his grasp, turning it in a single fluid motion. A second assailant lunged, only to be cut down before his weapon cleared its sheath. There was no wasted movement, no mercy, only survival. Aaron had seen soldiers fight before. The Seraph trained for decades, their wars choreographed like dance. But James fought like chaos given form, adaptable, relentless, and utterly focused. His smaller frame should have been a disadvantage against the towering assassins, yet he used it to move faster, ducking beneath their reach, striking at joints and throats with surgical precision. A plasma bolt sizzled past her face, and James hurled himself toward her, knocking her to the floor as the wall behind them erupted in sparks. He didn't hesitate. He rolled, leveled the captured blade, and threw it. The weapon buried itself in the shooter's chest. For a moment, silence filled the chamber except for the hum of dying energy weapons. Then more footsteps thundered in the corridor. Reinforcements. James glanced at her, breathing hard, eyes burning with focus. "Stay behind me," he said, when the next wave entered. They met something more terrifying than any Seraph warlord. James fought not for glory, but for her, for the fragile peace she embodied. He improvised with broken furniture, shattered armor, anything his hands found. Every motion spoke of experience carved from countless battlefields. The assassins faltered, confusion breaking their rhythm. They had expected a weak human diplomat, not a soldier who fought like an elemental force. When the last body fell, the air smelled of ozone and blood. James stood amid the wreckage, chest heaving, a long cut bleeding down his arm. Erin rose slowly, her pulse pounding. She looked upon her husband, the man she had married for peace, and saw in him not fragility, but the echo of something ancient and indomitable. He turned toward her, voice steady despite the carnage. "It's over." But she knew it wasn't. The galaxy had just witnessed what humans could do when pushed too far. The fires of the coup still smoldered across the capital when dawn finally came. Smoke curled into the pale sky, carrying the scent of ash and iron. The palace courtyard was littered with the remnants of battle, shattered weapons, scorched banners, the silence of those who would never rise again. In the center stood James Rourke, bloodied but unbowed, his uniform torn and his gaze unbroken. Around him, Seraph guards who had once mocked him now stood at attention, uncertain whether to salute or stare in awe. Erin descended the steps slowly, her gown streaked with soot. Every eye followed her as she approached the human who had fought like a legend from their oldest myths. The sight of him, wounded yet unshaken, made her chest tighten with something deeper than pride. The High Sovereign arrived soon after, flanked by elite guards. His gaze swept across the destruction before settling on James. "You defended my daughter," he said gruffly. "And the throne. Few warriors of the Dominion could have done the same." James inclined his head slightly. "I did what any soldier would," he replied. "Peace isn't something you talk about, you hold it together with your hands when it starts to fall apart." The old ruler studied him for a long moment, then turned to the assembled court. "Let it be known," he declared, "that the human is no mere consort. He is protector of the Dominion and of our peace." The pronouncement rippled through the crowd like a seismic wave. The same nobles who had sneered at him now lowered their heads. They had witnessed the impossible, a mortal man who stood against an army and lived. Later that night, as the fires were finally extinguished, Erin found James on the balcony overlooking the city. The stars shimmered through the drifting smoke. He leaned on the railing, bandaged arm resting against the cold stone. "You shouldn't have survived," she whispered. He smiled faintly, eyes still on the horizon. "Humans don't know when to quit. Maybe that's our gift, or our curse." She stepped closer, resting her hand on his. "It's our strength," she said, "and now it's mine too." Far below, the city's lights flickered back to life. Across the galaxy, stories spread of the human who fought like a god to protect peace, and the princess who learned that love and war often share the same heart.